So it all begins simple enough. You and your adventuring party, group, or gang are wandering the forest or an abandoned neighborhood late one evening. And then, from out of nowhere, you and your friends hear the high pitched cry of a baby. Perhaps it's because of pity, or maybe just curiosity, or, if you're playing monsters as well, even hunger, and begin frantically searching for its source. It isn't long though before you discover that there is indeed a baby in your immediate vicinity. It wears nothing on its body. No diaper, no blanket, and no baby rattle to speak of. Again, driven by some force, perhaps compassion, perhaps even greed, as you might think you'll receive a reward for finding someone's baby, or, again, if you're portraying a monster, to prevent the others from taking away a potential meal, you'll pick up the baby. Then, as soon as the baby is in your arms, that's when the questions start sinking in. What is a baby doing here of all places? Where are the parents of the baby? Who would leave their baby in a place like this? Why would someone just leave their baby this way? As you think these questions in your mind, you feel something sharp, or several things actually, poke at your skin. You look down at the baby you're holding and your eyes widen in terror. You see now that you are no longer holding a baby in your arms, but a monster. Gone are the plump cheeks and chubby arms, and is now replaced by a creature with gray corpse skin, razor-sharp teeth, and long claws at the tip of its fingers. You shriek back in revulsion, or, again, if you yourself are a monster, just mild surprise, and try to throw the monstrous beast that you thought was a baby away. However, as you do so, you realize that it has grabbed onto you with one of its claws, and then jumps on you to deliver a killing bite. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Tiyanak, a monster of Philippine folklore and mythology, a horrid undead creature able to take the form of a helpless baby to lure in victims. Then, once anyone is within the right distance, it reveals its true form and then attacks before its victims can even realize what is happening. So hi, hello, and happy Halloween! Welcome to another episode of Natural Juan. And, as already stated above, this episode is about another vital part of Philippine folklore. But before we begin, I'd like to invite you all to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell for notifications. Again, we've all noticed just how far the developers of tabletop role-playing games are willing to go to gain new ideas and inspirations for monsters. It is no surprise then that some have gone to the far-flung islands of the Philippines for concepts of enemies a team of adventurers might face. There have been the Manananggal that have already been featured in Pathfinder, World of Darkness, and Shadowrun, and the Tikbalang, which has been featured in Changeling the Dreaming and one of Pathfinder's many bestiaries. And now, we come to another of the Philippines' most frightening monsters, the Tiyanak. Seriously, as a child, I once watched a local horror film involving the Tiyanak and I couldn't sleep for months. I was convinced that there was one under my bed and that at night, once I was asleep, it would attack me while I was helpless. Now that I'm all grown up, at least physically that is, I'm not ashamed to say that I'm still a bit worried about actually running into one of them. The legend of the Tiyanak is quite old and has existed even before Spanish colonists came to the Philippines. Its legend is also diverse and is not always the same in every region or province. The most dominant lore regarding the Tiyanak is that it is an undead aborted fetus. Yes, you heard that right. Due to being unwanted, the Tiyanak is driven by its feeling of being abandoned to hunt down and kill the mother or parents that left it to die. This particular legend has been used as a deterrent for abortion, as the Philippines has always clung tightly to Catholic beliefs, stating that women who get abortions are haunted and hunted by the ghost or zombie of their children. That said, there are other angles to this part of the mythology, and some state that Tiyanak is simply a stillborn baby and becomes undead because of being buried without the proper burial rites. Then there are others. Again, mostly those who cling strongly to Christian beliefs, who claim that Tiyanak are children who have died and been buried without receiving a proper Christian baptism, and are thus unconsecrated and open to possession by evil spirits. Lastly, of course, are various legends from Central Luzon which say that the Tiyanak were never human at all, and are actually bizarre, evil fairies who simply assume the form of babies in order to lure in victims to devour. The list goes on. The Tiyanak is still a huge part of Filipino culture and media today, and every few years a movie is made about them in one form or another. That said, Tiyanak, as already mentioned above, can make a good addition to any adventure in a game. What makes them truly stand out as potential enemies is their mimic-like traits. For those not in the know, mimics are monsters that take the form of various objects that players might attempt to take. Their most commonly recognized form is that of a treasure chest, and when a player is close enough to reach it, it pounces on the player with its hideous maw full of sharp teeth. As you can probably tell, the basic mimic has a lot in common with your Tiyanak, although I must say that Tiyanak is certainly more terrifying. After all, while you can choose to completely ignore a treasure chest unless you're the greedy or overly curious type, it is nigh impossible to ignore the cries of a hungry baby. With a long and exciting history, it is actually very easy and quite fun to pit adventurers against a Tiyanak for their adventure. For simpler adventures that have little to do with horror, you can use the lore of them simply being evil fairies or spirits that can take on the form of babies. This way, the urgency and idea of the Tiyanak is retained, but without the utterly horrifying implications that come with them. Perhaps one of the adventurers pick up a baby along the way, thinking that it is simply just another abandoned child, completely unaware that it is an evil fae commanded by the game's villain to kill, or at least delay the party's progress. Maybe the adventurers meet an essential NPC like an innkeeper or blacksmith, or even a local baron or monarch who's been fooled into keeping a Tiyanak in their home, thinking that it is simply another baby. In the latter, it would be an interesting challenge for the players to convince a person that the baby they think they have adopted might actually be a monster straight out of their nightmares. For those that do want a bit of horror in their adventures, those who want a little bit more spice in their stew, so to speak, they can use the Tiyanak in its more dominant lore, that of a voraciously hungry undead baby. Again, it can be used as a simple distraction for the party on their way to slay the evil lich plaguing the land. Perhaps the players have stepped onto a nursery in a land saturated with necromantic magic, and the babies wail and crawl again like typical zombies, attempting to devour the party. Another, more terrifying story would be if an NPC of high standing like a wealthy merchant or noble beseeches the party for aid as they are stalked by a previous child who has now become a Tiyanak after being buried without the proper baptismal or funerary rites. All in all, there is certainly something interesting in a monster that is able to take the form of a helpless baby. There is a form of irony in the fact that while it may initially appear in a helpless form, it can suddenly become a horrid monster, able to tear grown men limb from limb with its teeth and claws. The interplay between being the hunter and the hunted is one that has existed for millennia, from the nymphs that take on the form of beautiful maidens to lure men to their doom, to werewolves who may appear as mundane men by day but become ravening beasts by the light of the full moon. The Tiyanak is most assuredly one of folklore's most insidious horrors. Anyway, that concludes this episode of Natural Juan. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share, and if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to my channel and hit that bell for notifications. I'll see you all in the next video, and have a happy Halloween!